Okay, so it looks like we're live. This is the second stream in the channel, and I'm starting this new web development series. So it's all going to be live, short videos like this. And if there's any issues, please let me know. The live stream could run into a few issues with my internet connection being bad or the audio or video problem. So let me know. If anyone's joining, the chat's available, so I'll be responding. If you're watching the recorded version of the video, please leave a comment and I'll definitely answer it. So I'm going to quickly switch over to my desktop so that you can see what I'm doing and we'll get started right away. So this is my desktop. Right now it's just blank. I can just see the chat and I'm just going to open a browser. So as the video title and description mentioned, I'm going to be talking about REST APIs today. So APIs in general are quite vague and very vast to cover, but specifically REST APIs is what I'm going to cover today. And it's very important, especially if you're doing web development, even other cases, but this is much more important, and this is a standard that's generally used to send information between servers, between your app, the client and the server, and it's very important to have at least a general understanding. So, what some people don't realize is, especially when you're getting started, is all you have to do is type google.com and hit enter, and you're basically sending one request right now. So you're sending a get request to this address. But this is so when you talk about networks, there are so many layers, and behind the scenes, there's one more layer that's functioning, which is this google.com is a domain that is sent to DNS server, domain name system, which is what DNS stands for, and that gives you the IP address for google.com. So what I'm going to do is open up my terminal, and if I actually ping google.com, you should be able to see that this is the IP address of Google. So I don't need to type. Google is, using the domain is just what we use for convenience. But if you actually type in that IP address, it still takes us to Google. So that's what happens behind the scenes. The domain is just for our convenience, but that's what actually happens. And every time you hit enter, you type something in the search bar or the URL bar, and you get the result. You're basically sending a GET request to this server using this address, and the server is responding back by sending us this HTML, which the browser can render. So to analyze all this and see actually what's happening behind the scenes, and for us to actually create our own requests, there's a tool or software that I'm going to be using, and it's called Insomnia. So I'm just going to open my search engine of choice, and I'm going to be searching for Insomnia so that I can actually show you how the so you need to scroll down a little bit down. You need to scroll a bit. It's insomnia.rest. So this is the one, a popular alternative to this, which was been there for much longer time, is Postman. So whichever you want, but especially if you're a beginner, I recommend this. It's much more simple and cleaner. So you don't need to log in. You just need to go over to the download section. I think just click start building for free. So that it is a free trial, especially for just one person. So log in and get the product downloaded. Since I'm on Linux, I'm going to open my terminal and see if I can install it using Snap. Search for Insomnia. Yeah, should be there. So I'm going to install it quickly right now. So this is going to download. If you want to download it, you can too. And meanwhile, I'm going to go back to google.com just to show you what's happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to open up the Chrome developer tools. Or, usually the dev tools are there in any browser that you're using. So use Control Shift J or I. Again, if you're on a Mac, it might be different. And I'm going to open up the network tab. So in the network tab, every time you reload the page or something happens, you can see all the requests that are going. So I'm going to expand this a little bit and scroll up all the way to the first request. So you can see the first request is to www.google.com. Now if I click on this on the right side, I can see all the information. So this is the preview. This is what we actually got back and the browser's rendered. Now if we go to headers, this is like all the meta information. So you can see the request URL was this. So you always need the URL or the address. That is the most important thing. right? And apart from that, you need the request method or the verb, sometimes it's called. So there are different types of verbs. Again, when I open up Insomnia, I'll show it to you. And the get request is the most common. Now, the status code is what you get back. So you send a request, and if everything's okay, usually you get a status code starting with 2. So it's all 3-digit codes. And if you get something starting with 200 is just a general okay code. If anything starts with 2, generally you're okay, everything's gone fine. If it starts with 500, usually that means something's gone wrong on the server. And if it's 400, 300, something like that, generally that means you've done something wrong. So that generally helps you to identify where the error has happened so that you can debug and fix it. So again, if you go into the response, you can see this is what the server sent back, HTML, and the browser is rendering it. So every time you do something, the browser, maybe even you submit a form, all those requests are being sent and you can inspect that using the DevTools. So this is very important when you get into web development. So I'm going to close this, and looks like Insomnia is installed. I'm going to launch Insomnia. So it's fully cross-platform app. It's I think it's an Electron app if I'm right. Even Postman is based on Electron. So you shouldn't have any issues. It's going to look exactly the same. And I'll show a few different ways that you can format these requests, and then I'll give you sample APIs. So there's this thing called Open Weather Map where they have a really good free API service for to collect weather information. So even for free, it's quite good. So after you finish this, if you want to try it out, you can definitely try that out. It's very good to practice. So this is how Insomnia looks. Now what we can do is on the left side, we can create a new request. So I'm going to click on new request and give it a name. So I'm going to just call it Google. That's the first thing that we're going to try out. And on the right side, you can see it's asking us for a verb or the method. So these are the different types of verbs. You can just ignore this. So get, post, put, patch, delete, options, and head. So I'm just going to be going over the most common one. So usually get is to get all the data back, yeah, either a specific part or just everything, list of information. Post is when you want to push something, you want to add some new information. Maybe you're creating a new user in a sign up form. You want to send a post request with the user's email, password, their name, so that you can save it in the database. A put request is usually to update information, a specific part. So you're not adding, but you're updating something usually. If I'm right, there is an update, I'm not sure. Patch is similar to update actually, and then delete is to delete something. So there are different types of requests. Technically, when you're creating your own API, this doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. You can mix and match, but this is generally a good convention to follow. So I can click create. So this is the most important thing. Now the two most important things is the request, which we've fixed already. The second thing is the URL. So I'm just going to enter Google's URL right now. So I've entered this. Now let's hit send. So I can see the preview. I've got it back. I can see all the headers. These are different headers, the meta information we can send. And then if I go to timeline, we can see exactly what's happened, what the request was sent, what's the response, everything we can see. Now actually I think we can, so this is the visual preview. I can even switch to raw data. So this is the raw data we got back. It's just HTML, as simple as that. Now I'm going to go over to this really good resource again to test and explore, which is the Json Placeholder. If you go over to this URL, just do a Google search, one of the first resources you will be able to see. Go over to guide, and then you can see these different resources that we can query. So you can just copy this URL. I'm just going to copy it until posts, and let's change the URL to this and send the next get request. So now we can see it sent us back some JSON. So if you don't know what JSON is, it stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and this is generally used as a standard, regardless of what programming language you're using, how you've created your server, your API, or what client it is. Usually information is sent over the internet using JSON data, and this can be parsed or converted from and to. So the server has responded back sending us data. So we can see a list of users. We have the user ID, the ID, a title, and a body. So this is what it sent back. Now you can see that if you want to get back a specific resource, so the first one, you can add /1 and hit send. So now we're getting back only the first one. So that's how it works, and we've got back our data. So now if we want to create a new resource, so just to let you know, this is just for demo purposes to explore and try it out. So if I try to actually create something, it's next time I'm not going to be able to see it. It is been created and I do get a response, but it's not going to be persisted. So the same endpoint slash post, but now we can change the method to post, and we see that it requires a body, and this is JavaScript. So you can see it says json.stringify. So that's basically converting a normal JavaScript object, which is this part inside the parenthesis. The normal JavaScript object is converted to a JSON string and then sent using the body. Now we're just sending a raw request using Insomnia to test and debug this API. If you're using JavaScript, this is what you need to do. And the response that's coming back, either you can just view it as JSON, or if you want to convert it to a JavaScript object and extract particular information, then you can use json.parse. So that is in case you're working with JavaScript. So for me, I just want JSON. So I'm going to click on this body and then I'm going to select JSON because that's the data we want to send. So over here, you start with these brackets, and then I'm going to add a title. Let's say new user, and then a body. Just say something random, and then a user ID. So I'm just going to say some arbitrary big number. And what you're seeing right now is the JSON syntax. So it's basically like a key and value. So everything is surrounded by quotes, these double quotes. But the I think numbers are the exception. Numbers alone don't have to be surrounded by quotes, but any string and the key included have to be surrounded in quotes. And then you separate it. So the key and value, that pair, you use colon. And also what you can do is you can add an array. So say array and then or list, and then you can add these square brackets, and then you can list items separated by a comma. So that's also similar. So as you can see, it's very similar to JavaScript objects if you work with that. So now our thing is ready. Now optionally, if you're using JavaScript, if you're using any programming language, you might have to specify what type of content that you're sending. So if you can see, it's actually automatically included this in Insomnia for me, but sometimes you might have to do it manually. The content type is set as application/JSON. That's because we are sending JSON data, so the server knows how to understand this information. If you're just sending plain text, or if you're sending some other kind of data, then you might have to change this header. So there are so many different types of headers that you can use. Another header is the authorization header, which we're not going to use, but just to let you know. So if you're accessing any resource which is protected, if you need to have access to it, if you sign up or if you pay for it and then you need to access it, or they have some kind of limit, so many requests per second or per minute or per 24 hours, then you might have to get an API key or some kind of token. So you want to let them know that this is the person, this is me who's accessing this resource. I have got this API key and I'm allowed to access it. You need to let them know. So you say authorization, and the most common way is use a bearer token. So you see, you write bearer, bearer space, and then the token. The token might be something that they give you. You just have to copy and paste it, and then you send it. So that's how authentication usually works. So either it might just be an API key you generate, or it might be something like OAuth, which is a little bit more complex, multiple steps. But if it's protected, then you will have to do it like that. And there are so many other headers that you might have to use. So right now we don't need to worry about authorization. We just want to create a resource, work on this example right now. So I'm going to hit send, and it's been created. So we can see 201. So if it was just 200, it would have just said okay. Now 201 also means okay, everything's gone right, but we can see that 201 stands for created. So it's been successfully created, and we can see it's responded back with the information that we got. So user ID has been given and an ID of 101 has been assigned. So we use in that queue 101 in that list. So we've sent get request, we've sent post request. So this is basically how it happens. Now, when you want to do other types of requests, all you need to do is change the verb and change the body that you're sending. And in terms of authentication, I already show you that the bearer token is a very common way of doing it. So this is all you need to get started with web development and REST APIs. So almost every REST API has a documentation which you can follow, what kind of information you want to send, what format it is. And I think the next important thing that you need to know is how you can send information. So right now, the only way that I've showed you is to be sending information using the body. But another type of way that you can send information is using the URL, which we actually just demonstrated. So this is, I think, called a URL parameter or something. So we added post/1. So we are actually adding information in the URL itself. So we are saying the first post is what we want to update. So we say post/1. Sometimes there's something called a query parameter. So you can actually demonstrate this in Google by just searching for this and saying enter. So you can say after slash search, which is the URL route, just like how over here we say slash posts. Over here, we can see this question mark syntax, question mark q equals something. So basically the name of the query parameter, which is q, and then we say equal to, and then we give it a value, which is Google. So I'm going to format this entire request from scratch. So just go to Google and now let's do it ourselves. So slash search colon q for a query and then equal to the query. So we can say hello, for example, and hit enter. So we can say it comes up with hello. So another thing that you just need to know is when you put stuff in the URL, it has to be properly formatted. So um, we say hello, but what if we want to include a space? Generally, in the URL, we don't add quotes. So if we just add quotes like this, we don't have to worry about the space. We can just type whatever we want. But generally, quotes are not used. So you need to refer to the API documentation and make sure that you know what they expect. So most likely they're not going to expect it. Google also doesn't expect it. So if you want to search for hello world or um, maybe Google images, so sometimes it's not going to work. The space is not going to be recognized properly. So you need to encode it for the URL specifically. So there are websites that you can do this. I think it's called encode URL. If you just do a search, there will be many websites that do it for you. So let's go over here, an online encoding decoding service. So if I type hello world and click encode, then you can see on the bottom it has this %20. So I'm going to show it you right now. So instead of adding an actual space, let's add %20 and hit enter, and I can say see it says Google Images. So that's how you add a query parameter. So similarly, what if you want to add multiple query parameters? So now what you can do is you can use the and symbol and then you can add the next one. So maybe the next one is called content. I'm just giving an example. I really don't know if it actually exists. And then again, as usual, you give equal to and then the value for that query parameter. So this is all you need to know for REST APIs. When you want to send information, is either using the body or in the URL itself or using a query parameter which is also in the URL. Then you need to add specific headers depending on what information you're sending. So the most important one is the content type, and then the second most important one is the authorization if required. And that's all you need. Apart from the actual verb or method and the URL, you're all set. And hopefully this video has been very helpful. This wraps up the live stream and this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section, and I hope I'll be able to answer it soon enough. And if you again have any suggestions, feedback, let me know. And if you want to see a future video, also I would definitely like